Welcome to the Streets.mn podcast, the show where we highlight how transportation and land use can make our communities better places. You may recall that a few months ago we interviewed Sarah Johnson about her experience moving from Omaha to St. Paul. She's jumping in now to learn about local politics by interviewing City Councilwoman Mitra Jalali on her podcast, Car Free Midwest. Let me hand you off to Sarah.
All right, well, let's just jump right into it. Today, I'm super excited to be interviewing not my new council member, but a councilor in St. Paul, Minnesota, my new home, Councilor Mitra Jalali. Would you please take a second to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name's Mitra. I use she, her pronouns. Since 2018, I've been representing Ward 4 in the city of St. Paul, and I'm excited to be here.
I guess, first of all, I'll say why I'm excited to have you on here. I've been kind of following you on Twitter, of course, social media, blah, 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 as I was preparing to move to St. Paul from Omaha, Nebraska, for political reasons, actually, which maybe we'll get into. But I heard about, a lot of the hubbub around the Summit Avenue Trail project and went to, I think it was Sustain St. Paul had kind of a bike plan review and had been following along on the interwebs, some kind of the discussion and pushback about the Summit Trail project. And then I watched the city council meeting. And when you started talking about, accountability and how our streets need to be for people and the democratization of our streets, I was like, okay, I'm going to bother her and see if she wants to come talk to us about how streets should be for people. And I guess a little bit of quick background. I won't bag on Omaha, Nebraska too much, but it's really refreshing, I will say, to be here and listening to legislators and lawmakers, decision makers, not only saying the words, but then voting to back up what they say. And so high five, because you seem to be someone who's doing that, which I really admire. And I think, I was talking to Josh just a second ago, we might even just put in part of the clip from that city council meeting.
I would like to speak from the heart about why I'm supporting this trail right now, and to speak from a personal place. When I was not even a councilwoman yet, I was running for city council. On May 9, 2018, one of our neighbors, Alan Gran, was riding his bicycle, and he was struck and killed by a school bus as they were crossing the intersection at Snelling and Summit. And what I remember is people that I knew all furiously texting each other because they did not know at the time who had died. And so there was a series of messages going around asking, are you okay? There's a feeling on the other side of that message, hoping that the person I know texts back. Was it someone I know? Was it someone I know? And there is one family, the Gran family, for whom the heaviest outcome, the truth about that, was that it was their relative. And I remember at that time thinking, I am running for office to represent a part of this community and to take responsibility for the safety of people like Alan and also the school children on the school bus who were also traumatized by that incident because they had to see that on their way home. It disrupted thousands and thousands of our residents' lives. And I remember that was a moment where it became very real and very serious for me. What is the responsibility we have to make a safer city? Which will fundamentally include changing the way our city is built. It will fundamentally include inconveniencing people. It will be unpopular at times, and it will be the right thing to do. And now we're here with something that we can do. Something that means we don't have to have another ghost bike. We might not need to have another memorial ride.
Since that's what caught my eye about you, I don't know if we want to just jump right into that, how you thought that process went and what led you to vote the way that you did. I was just, again, impressed that you seem to be learning from history and making decisions based on things that need to happen instead of just the same old, same old. So what was kind of your take on that situation?
I think that the Summit Avenue Regional Trail process, it's like a microcosm of so many things in this work. Like when you're doing a major road reconstruction or change to a road or anything dealing with the public right of way, there's always all this technical expertise, right? You need to make sure that you understand correctly the relevant structural realities of the situation. You are looking at what are the possible scenarios that we could engineer and design for. What's that going to take? What will be the funding scenarios? All the complications of finding funding for these things, everything, right? But there's this human piece to all this that like gets lost in the process and gets lost in like the technical stuff. And I think that the job of an elected official so much of the time is just to translate into everyday simple terms, like what's the vision we have for what we want to be true in our community? How does that connect to like the facts of this situation? What are the values guiding the decision that we're being asked to make? And like based on that, what are we deciding? And I ended up very unexpectedly like telling a story about biking on Summit over the weekend. And it's funny because my staff had like helped me come up with talkers for this public hearing, and I hadn't talked for 4 hours at this point because we were listening. And by the time I had listened to everyone, all the points that I had typed up and that my staff had worked on had like been said a lot of times. And it was like I was the last person to talk at the end of the whole night, like after all the council members, after all the testimony. And I kind of in the moment, sorry, my computer notification should be off. I just kind of spoke from the heart. And so it was definitely also just on a personal level emotional for me because of what I shared about like my transportation trauma and anxiety, but also just being a person of color who has been asked to lead our community forward in a time where like racial equity in Minnesota is not something that we get to just like pay lip service to. Like we have been through too much as a community to like keep perpetuating the systems and practices and attitudes that have gotten us into this place. And we happened to be having that hearing on the night before the George Floyd anniversary. Never feels like the right word for what happened. But it was, you know, it was like the date in the year when George was murdered by the Minneapolis police. And like the fact that like, I to be very candid, felt like there was a lot of toxic whiteness on display in that public process. And I see it all the time as an elected official. And it's very like triggering to have to continually be in spaces where like I am one of very few people of color in the room. And then I'm there at this table asked to make a decision, and I'm bringing all those experiences, all those communities, beliefs, values, etc. with me. So I feel like I'm giving you a very long answer, but it's just kind of like I've been reflecting on that night and that moment and why I said what I said. I did not give like a planned speech. I was giving like a series of remarks that reflected what was going through my mind at the time. And that's how it ended up like that.
I think that's what caught my attention was like the level of authenticity behind your words, which, you know, a lot of times, again, coming from Nebraska, politicians, there are some good ones. I'll shout out Senator Megan Hunt if she's listening. She's not. Anyway, before you were an elected official, what were you doing and how did you get into the realm of city council?
My story kind of begins in terms of my public service career as being a classroom teacher. I taught middle and high school social studies, and that was a 3-year experience of just seeing up close, like, here's what kids are going through, here's what we can do within the classroom and then the school system to help them. And then there's also all this stuff happening so outside of the schools that is where my kids are the entire rest of the day, they're not with me. And there were situations that really rattled me and made me like deeply furious and hurt and angry to want to do something to make that be different. Like one of them was a student who came in a few days in a row and was clearly exhausted, and we pieced together that he was like literally just fully homeless, was not sleeping anywhere, was probably sleeping outside. Like extraordinarily distressing to see that that's happening to like a 16-year-old, working with him and figuring out like who's his nearest relative that we can work with to help coordinate some solutions, all these different things, right? And then just seeing them fall through the cracks. So many more stories like that I could tell where I saw like when my kids had what they needed, like their basic needs and like social and emotional affirmation and safety, they could come in and write like an entire essay about the connections that they saw, like between what was happening in their lives and the world around them. And it was like, this is like not rocket science. Like, we need to take care of people and then their lives can be better. And it just kind of felt that simple to me. And I always knew that, but being a teacher, like, reaffirmed that for me in a way that felt so incredibly urgent. And so I started organizing other teachers, started working. It came 2012 working on it's so funny to talk about 2012 now. It's like, it was a simpler time. We were re-electing President Obama, and we were like, it was like a lifetime ago.
A lifetime ago.
It's so wild. Totally. But that was the year where we were passing a school levy for St. Paul Public Schools. And there were like all these important initiatives happening, like the presidential election, but there was this local school election that was really important. And I went to like every single school site in St. Paul Public Schools, and I talked to teachers as part of the St. Paul Federation of Educators, basically like a union organizer who could go and get teachers signed up for phone banks and canvassing to like talk to our neighbors and voters about why we need to pass like additional funding for public schools. And it connected back to my teaching experience because like we had a sheet that laid out, here's if we pass this funding, what each school gets. And there were things on the list like, if we don't pass this levy, Central High School, which is like the biggest kind of like heart of St. Paul public high school, isn't going to have a counselor. Like, if you have that many students in the building and so many of them, maybe they're the first in their family to go to college, and you don't have that like school resource, that's an entire trajectory that could go one way or another and affect like generations in that family. So it was like very clear to me, here's this election, here's what we get for it, here's how that impacts people, and here's why we need to win this election, and here's the work you do that. And so from there, I feel like I was just, that was it. Like I had pivoted into like policy and organizing. And before I ran for city council, what I was doing most recently was our Attorney General, Keith Ellison, was previously a congressman. He represented the 5th Congressional District, and I worked in his district office as like a constituent services aide, and I did outreach, and it was a ton of just like government problem solving. Like, what's happening to this constituent? Why is it happening? What are the systemic causes? How do we solve that with the level of government that we're in? And what else can be done beyond the boundaries of our office's power to like expand the outlook and horizon for fixing this problem? And I feel like that whole body of experiences was my training. And then I ran for city council because there was an unexpected special election that happened in my ward because my predecessor, his name is Russ Stark, he's still at the city of St. Paul. He's our chief resilience officer now. So Russ, who was like a 10-year council member for my ward and was the council president, and now he's like our climate officer basically. And I still work with Russ all the time. But I knew that I had big shoes to fill.
Just the fact that you have a climate officer is like, this is, okay, so just super quickly about why I'm here, and all of this is blowing my mind. I've, been in the bike advocacy, bike retail industry for 20 years, helped start a nonprofit in Omaha based on like, it's called mode shift, switching mode share, all of these things. I even ran for city council because like you, it's like these problems need to be talked about. They don't seem to be rocket science. We just need people with the capacity to push back, even as you noted in your speech about the trail, sometimes unpopular, sometimes will inconvenience people. And like no one's able to say that there anyway. So when my husband and I were deciding where to move, we were really looking for a place that like kind of felt like a values alignment. And a lot of the work that you have been pushing specifically, I really want to thank you because like this is inspirational and this is like the reason that we're here. And so awesome to hear about your background and all of that. I'm also just digging into the fact that you are running again and you're running unopposed. To me, that says a lot that no one is opposing you because it's like pretty clear that the community has your back.
It's weird to be running unopposed because I ran in 2018 and again in 2019, and I had multiple opponents like the whole way. And so my entry into public office was like this battery of elections with like a lot of different people. And now I'm just, in September is my 5-year anniversary at the city of St. Paul. So I've been kind of doing a lot of reflecting of what have these 5 years been like, right? And the things that have happened in the last 5 years have been like extraordinary in the good ways and the bad ways. So I feel I've been kind of processing even what you just said of like something feels different this time. But I do think you're right that a lot of it is just like trust that is about doing things with community as much as possible. And like, I think that in politics too, especially in local government, you can't always do things that people want you to do. It's like either out of reach or not within your powers. And like, I think that trust is also built by being honest about what is and isn't possible, and like staying committed to what you can do that's within your responsibility, and like working together to expand the parameters of what's possible. And I just have been thinking about that because I'm like, okay, what does it mean to be in politics? What does it mean to actually be effective? How come it feels like we have to choose between effectiveness and results and like political ambition, like in terms of just our how like progressive our policy agenda can be? I've been like kind of wrestling with those topics in my time as an elected official, and just a lot on my mind. So anyway, that was way more big picture, but it sort of connected to what you were talking about why is it like that right now? I'm just out here. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's an awesome segue into my next question, which is what do you see for the next 4 years? A lot of the stuff that, I mean, your website is amazing, by the way. I've just been like
Thank you so much.
fangirling all of your initiatives.
You worked like
and
so hard
issues.
on that, so thank you.
Yeah, no, and campaign websites are like, I don't know. Anyway, a lot of really good stuff is what I'm trying to spit out here. And a lot of the stuff that like, it seems like has momentum here. I mean, you wouldn't be campaigning on these issues if you didn't think some of them, at least seemed pretty likely or legitimate. Stuff that is happening here is just stuff that we're trying to get folks to talk about in Omaha. And it's like, oh, back in 2011 when we passed our blah, blah, blah climate resilience, or maybe it was 19 climate resiliency plan, climate action, something that like we tiptoe around in Omaha. I think we might have consultants. I'm saying we. That's no longer we. Now this is we. This is exciting. They are just like piddling around like, should we say the words climate crisis? Probably not. And you're like, here's the deal.
Yeah. Different context.
Yeah. And
totally.
so it just feels super exciting to see some of these things like, the concept of highway removal is very touchy. And here it's like, no, there's studies happening. I see that you're going to push MDOT, like, wow. So, I would like, in your own words, instead of my excited blathering, tell us what you're hoping for in the next 4 years.
I'm hoping for like a permanent, stable foundation from which St. Paul can just be on a better course. I think that our city has endured a lot of inequities very quietly for a very long time, because that's kind of the Minnesota story. The Minnesota story is like, look at all these amazing outcomes for kids and families until you start disaggregating by like race and class. And we get into these nationally ranked publications and rankings as like best state to live and all these things. And like, I'm born and raised in Minnesota. I love our state. I've tried to leave multiple times. I've always ended up back here. I literally like lived other places, and then so there is a pull to like be.
It's like the boomerang effect. You're
totally
gone and
that.
you come back. Yeah.
One thing I've been processing with a lot of people of color from Minnesota is this feeling of like, we want our state to like live up to what we know is possible. And so when we talk about like what I want to do for St. Paul, I think St. Paul is a remarkable place. I think we are a special community. I feel at home in St. Paul. Like, I've chosen, this is where I'm going to be. This is my community. I also feel like we have a lot of ground to make up. We have a lot of like entrenched sort of formulas and realities and policies that have reaped all these repercussions. So like, I'm sure we'll get into this because we're talking on like a streets podcast, but the state of our roads is not like an overnight thing. That is about like the sort of like political reluctance to actually like make proactive investments in infrastructure that challenge the status quo and made it more economically feasible and more financially and like environmentally sustainable to transport people throughout our community. It's transit politics, it's all these things, right? And so now, surprise, surprise, like decades of that went by and our roads are crumbling and everyone is starting to feel it. Like, everyone is starting to experience an $800 pothole problem, which is like the median. I think the median claim to a pothole, like the amount for damages to the city right now is it starts with an 8. I don't want to say the wrong exact number, but it's like it's an $800 number. That's wild. And so we know that we have to do something radically different And that's going to include things like narrowing roads, making it easier to move around in a not single occupancy vehicle, making physical room for more transit and expanding transit. We're having a huge conversation in Minnesota about like transit working well. Like we got transit built and now we need transit to work really well. We can't just like make these multi-billion-dollar investments and then check the box. Like you need ongoing maintenance, regular frequency, all these pieces. So what is my hope for the next 4 years? Like imagine that, but in every area of life. Like community safety. We've built this approach in our city that isn't just sending a police officer to everything. It's in very early stages. I want that to feel like rooted and powerful and like stable if and when I leave office eventually. Because I don't do the rest of my life, but I have this like desire to feel like, you know, I ran again because I had the sense of my work has begun, but it is not yet finished. And I would like that to be true in like housing stability, in our climate resiliency, in our vision for safety beyond just reactive policing. That whole idea around community care that like started in the classroom and is now in public life for me, like that is what I want to be true for our community in a stable way, not in a way that feels like it hangs in the balance of like one election to the next, but where it's like we've institutionalized these things in policy investments and like city bureaucracy so that they're just there now. This is just the world we live in. And I think we've like what I've gotten to do is govern through a time in St. Paul where we've like begun to institutionalize a lot of that. And it just feels like I want to see this project through and feel like our city is on this like prosperous, equitable course. So I hope that's making sense. I know I'm like running for re-election and I should be able to give you the 30-second version, but for some reason you just make me want to tell you what I think in a non-packaged way. So I'm giving you like
this is why I swear I saw you. I was like, I like this person. I'm going to need to talk to her. So no, thank you. And this is not a 30-second podcast. So it's good that you don't have a 30-second response. That being said, I think I did tell Tom that I would only bother you for about a half an hour. So I do want to be respectful of your time. I know you got a million things probably going on.
Sure, we can, let's keep going. Yeah, that's great.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. So you were talking about a statistic. Again, I keep going back to the Summit Ave vote because that was the most I heard you speak in one moment. So I'm picking it all apart. But, you know, you're citing statistics. I mean, part of what was cool to me about this is like, you aren't like, well, we're making a decision about a bike trail, so we really just need to be thinking about these people concerned with trees and like parking. You were like, guess what? It's also a racial issue because it's twice as likely for you to be injured or dead if you are a person of color on the streets. So I guess I am, that was specifically about like pedestrian specific stuff. I'm wondering what, aside, you know, bike trails, and it looks like on your website I saw you were, you know, under your past several years, there's been about 30 miles of new safe bike infrastructure. Something that, as, you know, a newbie to the cities, how does sidewalk shoveling happen in the winter? I saw some movement on like maybe the Minneapolis side of like a municipal sidewalk clearing program. That was something that the org I worked with in Omaha was kind of trying to push folks to think about. I'm just wondering, you know, what types. Yeah.
It's a huge topic. And I think a growing number of my constituents want to see the city take on some form of municipal sidewalk shoveling. Right now, it's pretty much left entirely to like the general public to maintain their little piece of the public right of way. And we know that that's inequitable because we know that it's impossible to navigate the streets on foot at certain times of year when we have several inches of snow dumped on us. The city right now is working on evaluating, are there subsections of the entire sidewalk network that we could take responsibility for? Like major commercial corridors and the corners, like the, can we get like the little, I feel like I'm blanking right now, it's like a bobcat. There's like a little thing that will go and clear out the quadrants, right? So that at least is accessible. That's where like a lot of snow gets dumped. So there's a need to be involved more than just what is happening right now. A parallel conversation in St. Paul that I'm just like, here's your official invite to the alley plowing conversation is like right now neighbors in St. Paul like band together and they fundraise and pay someone to plow their alley. Like the city doesn't plow alleys. So these are all, the snow removal world of public policy is huge here. It's something that it's a serious amount of months of the year, and because of climate change, it's like a longer snow season. There's more variation. There's more weird predictability or unpredictability in weather events. I hope I can like laugh a little on this podcast. I was just one of the times that really I was just laughing was there was supposed to be this like massive snow event earlier this year. I think it was in like February, and it was so dire. The forecast was so dire that like both mayors and both cities' public works people and everyone, they had this press conference that was like Snowmageddon. Like it was just like everyone was like flanked, and you just felt like you were in the war room of some national event, because the visuals of this press event were just like, there will be a lot of snow. You need to move your car. It was like a multi-jurisdiction press conference around like, and it just cracked me up. I was like, this is so funny. Like it feels like an action movie. Like, what is my life? You know those moments where you're like, look at my life, look at my choices. I bet you're wondering how I got myself in this situation. I wasn't in that press conference, but like, I got a picture of our mayor because I felt like it was this amazing. It was just like, today on the job, we are putting out the word across every major news network. We really need you, residents of our beautiful cities, to move your freaking car. So it was just great. And like, and it ended up being fine, like fine with a capital F. And so all that to say, like, we go through so much. It's such an intensive operation to do the work of like physically hauling away tons and tons of snow, to make sure that people who are elderly, who use a wheelchair, who are young, like all types of folks who need to navigate and might be challenging, so that they can get through. And it's a huge topic. It's a huge, huge topic. And I've said, I think the city needs to like take on more than it does right now. We might not be able to do like a fully universal snow, like a sidewalk shoveling program, but we probably could do a pretty significant like subset of public right-of-way sections in the sidewalks across the city that suddenly make a transformative difference. Like, we could probably at least do that, and then from there we can build on that and see how can we get to a place where like sidewalks are shoveled equitably in our city, because they're not. So I realize I probably just spent like 9 minutes talking about that, but that's all where it's at right now in St. Paul side, and clearly you see in Minneapolis too, interested in that.
Yeah. Speaking of Minneapolis real quick, I just saw an article saying that they are shooting for 60% of all trips to be made without a car in Minneapolis. Yep. What the heck? That's a bonkers number.
Big deal. Yeah.
Like, that is, talk about a lofty goal. Like, it's so lofty, and I'm always the one with like the radical idea. That's why I don't live in Omaha anymore. Too radical, too lofty of goals. But like 60% that's quite lofty. Yeah. What do you think about that? And then also, like, what is St. Paul doing to shoot for a mode shift?
I would say, I will say, I'm not up on the specifics of like where that Minneapolis plan came about or what the plan to do it is, or like, I'm not up on that, but I have heard about it. What I will say is, and this is again my perspective as a lifelong Minnesotan, I think that like ambitious radical ideas have purpose in the public discourse to sort of disrupt people's assumptions about what is possible for moving around. I think many Minnesotans believe that the main way to get around the state is always going to be in a car, and that there just won't be enough public transportation infrastructure ever to serve folks, at least in the Twin Cities, right? Like, Greater Minnesota is going to be different in different ways, and they can still have different public transportation routes, but it's like in the urban core, there's still this sense that like, even in the cities, you need a car. And I would love for our Twin Cities to get to a place where you don't have to have a car if you don't want to, because we have just done such a good job of funding and expanding and connecting our transit network that you can find a ride anywhere. And there's also these little mini rideshare options. There's like the EV car share network. There's all the like scooters and things like that. Bike share. We need to get bike share back in St. Paul. Also, because we've thoughtfully developed our communities in a way where you can just get to what you need to get to. Like, you can get to your job and the bodega and your haircut and your nails and or your friend's house all within like a short little trip of each other. And I live a pretty connected life in the Twin Cities, and I feel like I haul my EV across town every week or so for something, even though I happen to have found a job where I'm literally just like in this area of the city and everything I care about is in that little world. So, I mean, I think that there's value in just like talking about big things publicly because it will jolt what people previously assumed was just going to be that way forever, because it cannot be that way forever. Like, the planet is burning and it's scary, and I think in the Midwest, I'm interested in like your perception of this as another Midwest person, but like our communities are feeling it differently. We're not necessarily at risk like how coastal cities are in like literal flooding terms, and the resiliency conversation, sometimes it feels like there isn't that same urgency here, but like people are going to move inward from the country and the coast to the center. Like, we will have climate refugees, and I just sometimes, I'm in a lot of transportation spaces in the Twin Cities. I'm on the Transportation Advisory Board, the TAB, which is like this multi-jurisdictional thing that's within the Met Council that gives guidance to the region on how to fund different transportation priorities. And like, being in a transportation conversation with communities around the metro, you see the range in like what people have experienced and therefore what their worldview of transportation should be, what it is. And like, we have to help everyone see that we're in the same conversation. Actually, it's not you're a community over here, you're a community over here. When you zoom out, like, we're all in this, and we need to plan for the future with a fierce urgency. And so that's where I think talking about things like, yeah, you might not need to have a car if you don't want to. Do you want several $100s back a month because you're not paying for insurance and car payments?
Yeah. It's like a tax that you have to, I mean, that's a lot of times, we talk about how not everyone can drive, physical, financial, whatever the reason. And it's like, it feels so offensive to only be able to participate fully in your community if you drive a freaking automobile. And so, yeah, it is all connected, and it is really fun to hear someone who is in a leadership role. I used to use leader in quotes a lot in Omaha, but I'm getting rid of the air quotes. You are a leader, and I'm super happy to have gotten to chat with you.
Well, I'm so grateful for this time with you. Welcome to St. Paul. Welcome to Minnesota. I'm grateful for your podcast. I love the concept of this podcast. I love being in the transportation discourse. I feel like sometimes I like cruise my Twitter feed and I laugh at, again, that look at your life, look at your choices, because my Twitter is like this, it's like this amalgam of like Minnesota politics, transportation, and housing discourse from all around the country, and then just like suggested pop culture thing of the moment. Like, I had a lot of, the algorithm just like bumps things in front of you. So when Euphoria was still airing, I was like, it was so funny because it'd be like, this statewide upzoning bill is like moving through the legislature, and then it was like Zendaya memes. And now it's like, Summit Avenue Regional Trail, and then like Taylor Swift. So
yeah, you on a bus to the Taylor Swift concert. I appreciate it. It's all so good. Awesome. Well,
bus and rail, taking the Swifties everywhere.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you for this convo. It's great.
And that does it for this episode of Car Free Midwest. We're here every other week with interviews, topics, and documentary pieces covering all things transportation. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Car Free Midwest, or visit us at carfreemidwest.com. Subscribe to Car Free Midwest wherever you listen to podcasts, and support us on Patreon, patreon.com/carfreemidwest. This podcast is produced by me, Joshua LeBure, and hosted by Sarah Johnson. Our theme song is New Deal by The Big Quiet via Free Music Archive.
You can tell me what to do. It's talking and it gets to
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Streets.mn podcast. This episode came to us courtesy of the Car Free Midwest podcast, all rights reserved. The music you're hearing right now is by Eric Brandt and the Urban Hillbilly Quartet. We're always looking to feature new voices on the Streets.mn podcast, so if you have ideas for future episodes, drop us a line at podcast@streets.mn. In fact, we recently had a listener write in saying that his whole family loves listening to the show. In particular, their 12-year-old son is really interested in all things transit, urbanism, etc. And they are wondering, is there anybody else around his age who is also getting involved in these spaces? I didn't have a great answer for them because when I think of young people in urbanism, I usually think of college students. So, hey, listeners, if there's anybody else out here who is in the middle school to high school age range who's interested in all these kinds of topics, write in and let us know. And hey, maybe we can get a little get-together going. I think that would be a real cool thing. Until next time, take care.